Now I go to John Soane, who, in my opinion, was a superior architect to John Nash. And unfortunately, he deserves more study from my part and from anyone who might be interested in his work. He was also neoclassical, but I think in a more convincing way. I think he felt that so-called neoclassicism in a deeper way than John Nash. He was born 1 year later than John Nash, and he died around the same time. So they both lived, to be around 80. So Sir, he was made a Sir, he was knighted, was an English architect who specialized, I don't like these words, in the neoclassical style. The son of a bricklayer, he rose to the top of his profession, becoming professor of architecture at the Royal Academy and an official architect to the Office of Works. He received a knighthood in 1831. So 6 years before he died, he was made knight of the British Empire, Sir John Soane. A great honor, and I have a lot of respect for someone who is the son of a bricklayer and arrives at such altitudes in the society of his time. Bravo to him. And I think he deserved it, and we'll see his works. His best known work was the Bank of England. His work there is largely destroyed, a building which had a widespread effect on commercial architecture. He also designed Dulwich Picture Gallery, which with its top-lit gallery was a major influence on the planning of subsequent art galleries and museums. His main legacy is the eponymous museum in Lincoln's Inn Fields in his former home and office, designed to display the artworks and architectural artifacts that he collected during his last lifetime. And you'll see he was an unbelievable collector. I mean, this museum is quite something. I mean, it made me think of Citizen Kane, but it's very, very impressive. We'll see it soon. The museum is described in the Oxford Dictionary of Architecture as one of the most complex, intricate, and ingenious series of interiors ever conceived. Okay, he does look like a sensitive man. I like him. I wish more architects look like him, with a feminine side, with a sense of vulnerability and limitation. And I don't know, his eyes are the eyes of a man whom I would like to have a talk with. Well, he became also a statue. That's because the son of a bricklayer, craftsman, was arrived very, very high on the social ladder. Here is another picture of him, but you see there is a certain melancholia on him, on his face somehow, a sensitivity that is not very typical of architects. He looks almost like Chopin a little bit, like a piano player, not like an architect. Architects are more assertive and less melancholy. Interesting man, I think, and I think an excellent architect, and I think he will convince us even with my insufficient presentation. Now these are drawings from that his own house that became that celebrated museum, the John Soane's Museum. And that's how it is. What you see is what you get. It is covered, it is filled with artifacts. It's just unbelievable. He loved beauty, and yes, people who love beauty sometimes, or maybe more than sometimes, they indulge in buying useless things, if we can call art a useless thing. Dürer did it, Rembrandt did it until he ruined himself. John Soane did it. What can you do? The artist loves beauty, and in the name of beauty, if he has a little bit of money, he buys things. Balzac was borrowing money like crazy in order to go to the flea market and buy the most useless things. Like Frank Lloyd Wright used to say, if I can have the luxuries, to hell, or who would need the necessities? So, the responsible creator or artist does this. Balzac then ran for his life for years to escape his creditors because he needed money to buy useless things, but beautiful things. This is a section through his house. Can you believe it? I mean, and that's exactly how it was, and it is. I imagine he did this rendering or someone working with him. These are just a few graphic works relating to his architecture. Letton Hall, 1783. So he started, it seems, earlier to build than John Nash. In my opinion, the neoclassicism of John Soane is more sober than it has even a sense of tectonics that I appreciate a little more than all those whitish, polished buildings by John Nash. Here, at least, I don't know. I mean, I don't like too much makeup, even women. I like women without makeup. And I like buildings without makeup. So this is a building without makeup. I like it like this. It is robustly sincere, if I can say so. Maybe at the time when it was built, it did have some kind of makeup, maybe, or it's very probable, but I like it as it is now. So they were contemporaries, born 1 year apart from each other, and yet so very different, although they both seem to be associated with neoclassicism. But John Soane is very different from John Nash. Here is the plan and the elevation, the main elevation of Letton Hall. And then we'll see another building by him, this one. So at the bottom is Letton Hall, and at the top, Tendring Hall, which I think was destroyed, if I remember correctly. Very similar if you look at the elevations and maybe even the plans. It's even in terms of volume of masses and the functions, they are similar, these two buildings. Tendring Hall, remaining porch after demolition. So indeed, it was demolished in 1955, a building from 1784. Sad, very sad. But again, here we see an architecture that became a ruin, but in a landscape, in a situation that it's almost rural. And I kind of like this. I like ruins, I confess. A hall, Rystone Hall, remodeled in 1786. Again, the buildings are very different from John Nash, although they are both considered neoclassical. But I don't see those bothering, white columns that John Nash used in his architecture in London. Here is a different kind of architecture. And well, yes, this picture is perhaps unintentionally romantic because it is, as you can see. But even in this picture, it is a building that somehow negotiates between the rural and the urban. And again, like previously, I like the fact that he doesn't have a makeup. So it's not, maybe his modest upbringing, the fact that he was the son of a modest craftsman, is shown in his architecture. And I like this. He was not trying to mimic what he was not. And although he arrived at a very high level in architecture and in the Londonese society, but somehow what we saw until now, his buildings have a certain modesty, which I like, even if when the buildings are not the smallest, and they are not, but I like this reticence that most of his buildings seem to have. And with this reticence, we are kind of closer to what might be what we call modernity. I mean, they are still 19th century, and yes, some of these buildings apparently were not kept in a very good shape. But even this says something in a way. No, I personally I like more John Soane than John Nash, although he was capable of extravagance as well, and will see his own house. Maybe that was the true himself, the great collector. Now this is a great ruin. It is what this is what it is. It is a great ruin. I mean, a house, but even in this stage of being a ruin, it is, I don't know, I think it is impressive. Maybe not so much inside. That's how it looked like in, I don't know at what time, not any longer. Now it looks like this. Okay, a yellow drawing room from 1791. So while John Nash didn't build too much until 1800s, he built. All these buildings were built until 1880, until 1800. This is, of course, it's not for his own house. It's a major accomplishment in a way. It's a secular room, but it could have been less secular, so to speak. It's a fine room, and it shows that John Soane had a good understanding of what an interior means, and there is intimacy, but there is also sense of grandness, of grandeur. It's fine. I think it's a fine interior. The plunge pool, 1791. This is an interesting thing. I don't know what is it. It's some kind of a bath, but look at it. It's both simple and complex. Is majestic in a way, but still modest. I think it's a striking example of the abilities of John Soane to do with an architectural language that is not excessively elaborate, a lot. Yeah, a very interesting work. And essentially it's just a room, but I don't know, it's very interesting. I mean, who would place two stairs, symmetrically to curve themselves towards, what essentially is a bathtub? Obviously, this was not done for, his own father or for a proletarian, but it doesn't matter. I like its modernity, and it is an unconventional space. Home farm. This is, he built several buildings for this farm. I always like the meeting between the rural and the urban. Here there is more the rural than the urban, but look at this charpente, I would say very, very nice wooden work. It's a farm. But just imagine a sculptor or a painter having the studio there. I don't know. I would love to have such a space at my disposal and to imagine all kinds of architectures there. It's very nice, and it shows his integrity as an architect. The structure has integrity. It is striking, I think, because of its sincerity. If you'll have a little bit of time, I'll also show Philibert Delorme to dilute a little bit the guilt that I didn't prepare us as well as probably it would have been necessary for John Nash and John Soane. Aud o voce. I hear a voice. Do you want to say something? Or please be kind and turn off the microphone. Thank you. All right, another gate. There are several gates that John Nash built and several gates that John Soane built. We don't build gates any longer for our cities or our villages, but maybe it's a function that would do some well to some. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. Thank you. You see, his architectural language is very, primal. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. It ruins my recording. Sorry, I have to do this. Okay, so we continue. Please understand this when I need to interrupt the presentation in order to mute a microphone is a difficult moment for me because I don't read. I have to be intense and inspired, and these interruptions make me uneasy. I forgot now what this model is for, maybe for this building. Yes. Interesting, the wild animals, enjoying themselves in front of the villa. The model with the 3 floors distinctly shown. It's a palace. It's it's like the French have. What can we do? The British Empire, the 19th century. There was opulence, there was power, there was affluence. The Bank of England, now this is considered, as we read, his most important architectural work. And from 1794, but it was ruined, it was destroyed in good measure, but we'll still see some renderings, and then we'll get an idea about the amplitude he arrived at in this work. It's a bank. Now I don't know. Well, there were banks in Renaissance Florence, but I don't know. I'm not an expert, and I also don't like banks, but I like good architecture, and I think this was good architecture. Too bad, I would say, it was for a bank. What can we do? Louis Sullivan also built great banks, his jewels, several small banks that are glorious as architecture. In this case, it's not a small architecture. It's not this was not a small building. This was the Bank of England. And look at it. It's almost like the palace of a Roman emperor is. I don't know if he built the whole thing, but it's a city within a city, or it was a city within a city. Look at this. All of this was the Bank of England. Now we are talking about a very powerful bank, obviously. And I don't know why it does not exist any longer, except through, I don't know if some fragments do exist. This is a photograph, of course, but it might be that even this does not exist. I don't know. But I hope this continues to exist. This doesn't exist, but maybe, it was, if it was demolished, it was demolished in the 20th century or very late in the 19th century. Too bad, because it was a complex, intricate, rich architecture. Somehow I like it more in photographs than in the renderings. And the simplified, if I can say so, neoclassicism. In fact, I would say that it is more almost like a modernistic building. Also from the Bank of England, from 1797, 1800, we saw already some images relating to this court. I don't know what happened to this building. It probably doesn't exist any longer. This was from 1803. That's how it looked like, but this is, I don't know if he did, yeah, I see his name, John Soane. Probably he did he did the drawing, and then someone etched the steel plate. Lothbury Court. The barn. The barn is a very interesting building. It's almost, you almost feel it's Chinese in a way. It's primal, it's archaic. It has, I wouldn't call it neoclassical because it's almost, it's not barbaric. It also has something Asian about it, Oriental. And look at these columns. I like his columns much more than the columns of John Nash. These are powerful brick columns that are, again, somewhere in between the rural and the urban. And I like the archaic quality. It's a simplicity that somehow is dear to me. So again, very different from John Nash. Now, if it is a barn, not too many barns have such columns in the front elevation, but it could have easily become some kind of a, temple almost. Park remodeled in 70, but it's also a building. When they title it with the word park, it's not just a park, it's a building with a park or gardens or whatever around it. Now we arrive here at this building. You see this building, you say, so what? It's a villa, it's a, a mansion, but inside there is a great collection, very much in the spirit of his own museum, the John Soane's Museum. And it's unbelievable what is going. I mean, look at that huge clock, which is supposed to be a watch, actually, a pocket watch, but oversized, suspended from the neck of, I don't know, Hercules or who is this mythological man, quite impressive with his muscles, if not with something else. And it's just incredible. I mean, you have here Remulus and Remus, and how do you call it? Loop, the wolf, the she-wolf. And that's how it was his own house as well. Just an incredible collection of sculptures and bas reliefs and stuffed animals. It's surreal. And some of these went for sale. Look what's going on here. You have the chandelier, and then you have the zebra, and God, it's surreal. I guess it's a museum now. Contents of this building, I don't know how to read, park available at auction. Look at this. It's an imago mundi in a way, in miniature, but still impressive. Okay, gateway at Pittshanger Manor, 1803. Another gate, many gates, and we don't have gates any longer because in a way we don't have places. It's where we have this endless urbanism that we don't have limits. In order to have gates, you need limits. And limits, for an estate or a limit for a city or a town, or we don't have. It's this sprawling, unending, and I think some limits are necessary, just as at the level of transparency and opacity, we also need, I think, some kind of negotiation between the two. As Jean Nouvel said, total transparency is obscene. Equally, I would say in urbanism, total extension of space without any kind of limits is maybe even in this case the word obscene would be appropriate, maybe with some poetical license. But now we arrive at his Sir John Soane Museum. From the outside, you wouldn't expect too much. There are two sculptures there, but that's about it. And the building, yes, is kept well between those two buildings on the sides, which are less well kept. But inside is a different story. Look what is inside. You know, I mean, did he live like this? If he did, he is both to be envied and pitied. I'm thinking of Citizen Kane, the great film by Orson Welles, considered by the North American Academy the best North American movie. I suggest you see it if you can, about a man who also collected voraciously. And in the end, you know, when we return to the dust, we are born from what happens to the great collection. But here, the collection is so, you know, well placed on the walls and on everything. It's incredible. Look at this. Obviously, this man, Sir John Soane, had the taste of totality. He wanted the whole of life, the whole of culture, the whole of human history, everything. He was, as Nietzsche would say, pour everything into the mold. In other words, do not renounce to anything. And that's what, I mean, here we see all kinds of, I mean, I imagine no, these are modern. And this is a different, this is, I think, some kind of a dining room with also with a library. And look at these tomes, these great books here that, I don't know, I mean, it's just too much. But the man loved beauty, and he loved, if Alvar Aalto was right that architecture belongs to culture and not to civilization, I would say that in the case of John Soane, this culture is somehow almost unacceptably present. I mean, it's too much of everything, but still is a very interesting interior. Of course, the structural purist would comment, what's going on here? You know, it's an arch, but supported by nothing here. And so the arch became decorative. It's not structural. In this case, maybe what the Brick answer to Louis Kahn would say something else. In the case of John Soane, I don't know if he designed those chairs, but they are interesting, and everything is. I mean, look at this. Even a Roman emperor, I think, would have been envious. It's not a big building really. This space is kind of narrow. You saw the facade, the elevation of the building, but what he achieved here is unique. Maybe that's why the Oxford Architecture Dictionary or Encyclopedia or whatever it is wrote what it wrote. Yeah, I would love to see this museum, you know, to enter it. When I visited London for a few days, I didn't, unfortunately, and now I regret. But what do we see here? An attempt to make the walls and the ceiling, even everything, talk, even sing. Through what? Through culture, through sculpture, through bas reliefs, we don't see too many paintings, but it's clearly the house of a collector who incorporated his collection into the very substance or flesh of his building. And now we'll arrive at the last image, a Gothic lodge. A small, modest building in a Gothic, with a Gothic flavor, so to speak. And this, perhaps as a preamble, as some kind of announcement for tomorrow, when I would like to present Victorian architecture, which in good measure was representing the Neo-Gothic or the Gothic revival in 19th century England, which is remarkable. And I would say this small building by John Soane has quality as well. It is, yes, in a nostalgic, tender way, uh, so-called Gothic, but I wouldn't mind living here, and opening this little window and, having maybe a tea or something and may open a book. And I don't, maybe I get carried away by nostalgia.